My mother called on a Tuesday afternoon to protect me, insisting I skip my sister's baby shower because the guests were all doctors. I simply told her I understood. Then I opened my calendar and scheduled an emergency board meeting for Saturday afternoon, exactly 30 minutes from the party. They had no idea my work was not charity administration. I was the one who decided which hospitals survived on funding and which futures got frozen. My name is Savannah Wright, and from the 34th floor of the Northbridge Tower, the ferries cutting across Elliott Bay look like children's toys pushing through gray bathwater. The rain in Seattle does not wash things clean. It just makes the steel and glass of the city shine with a harder, colder edge. That was exactly how I felt as I stared down at the grant proposal on my desk. It was a request for $45 million to fund a new pediatric research wing, a document thick with medical jargon, compliance metrics, and the desperate, polished hope of a hospital administration praying for a lifeline. To the world outside this office, specifically to the woman who gave birth to me, and the sister who was currently the golden child of the Pacific Northwest medical scene, I was simply Savannah, who worked in an office. Savannah, who did something vague with paperwork. Savannah, who was fine, just fine, but certainly not remarkable. My phone buzzed against the mahogany grain of my desk. The screen lit up with the word, Mom. I let it buzz twice. I was in the middle of a risk assessment analysis for a trauma center in Tacoma. But I knew Diane. If I did not answer, she would call the main line. If she could not get through there, she would text Lauren, and then I would be the difficult sister who was avoiding the family. I picked up the phone and swiveled my chair away from the view of the bay. Hello, Mom? Savannah. Honey, do you have a minute? Her voice was light, airy, the sonic equivalent of a meringue. It was the voice she used when she was about to rearrange the furniture in my life without asking. I have 5 minutes, I said, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was 3 p.m. I have a meeting with the finance committee at 3:15. Oh, finance, she said, the words slipping out of her mouth with zero traction, meaning nothing to her. Well, this won't take long. I was just looking at the RSVPs for Saturday, for Lauren's shower. My spine stiffened reflexively. The baby shower. It was being held at the Mariners Crest Hotel, a venue that cost more for an afternoon of finger sandwiches than most people paid for a used car. I had already bought the gift. I had already arranged my schedule. Yes, is there a problem with the catering? I told you I could cover the deposit if... No, the money is fine. Lauren and her husband have that handled. You know how well they're doing. The barb was small, barely a prick. I ignored it. Then what is it? I was talking to your sister this morning, Diane said, her voice dropping an octave, shifting into that confidential tone that usually signaled a conspiracy. And we were looking at the guest list. Savannah, honey, everyone coming is from the hospital. It's going to be all doctors, surgeons, specialists, the chief of staff. I waited. Okay. Well, she sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation. We just think it might be better if you sat this one out. The silence that filled my office was absolute. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning system and the faint scratching of a pen somewhere in the outer office, but inside my head, everything had gone dead still. Excuse me? I asked. My voice remained level, professional, the same voice I used when telling a board of directors that their fiscal projections were delusional. It's just that it's going to be very technical, Diane said, rushing the words now. You know how doctors are. They talk shop. They talk about cases and surgeries and fellowships. We just thought you would feel out of place. We didn't want you standing there in the corner feeling awkward while everyone discusses things you don't understand. I gripped the phone tighter. Things I don't understand. You know what I mean. Medical things, professional things. I looked down at the file on my desk. I was currently reviewing the mortality rates of 3 different cardiac units to determine which one deserved a grant that would keep their doors open for the next 10 years. I understood the medical ecosystem better than half the residents my sister worked with. I understood the economics of their survival. I understood that without people like me, the doctors my mother worshipped would be performing surgery in a tent. "Mom," I said, and I was proud that my voice did not shake. "Are you saying that my presence would be an embarrassment to Lauren?" No, of course not." Diane sounded scandalized that I would suggest such a thing, which was her standard defense mechanism when caught. "I am trying to protect you. Savannah, I don't want you to feel less than... These people, they can be very intense about their credentials. You know how hard Lauren worked for that title. We just want the day to be focused on her and her peers." "Her peers?" I repeated. "Yes, people who are at the same stage in life, professionally." "I see. It's for the best. Really," she continued, gaining confidence now that I wasn't screaming. "We can do a family dinner next week. Just us. Maybe go to that Italian place you like. The one with the coupons." I closed my eyes. The Italian place with the coupons. That was where I lived in her mind. "So, let me be clear," I said, cutting through her planning. "Lauren wants a room full of doctors. She wants the photos to look a certain way. She wants to introduce her guests without having to explain that her older sister works in administration." "You're making it sound ugly. Savannah, is it ugly, or is it true?" "She just wants people of a certain caliber," Diane snapped, her patience fraying. "Is that a crime? It's her day. She's the one bringing a life into the world. She's the one saving lives every day. Can't you just be gracious enough to step back and let her have her moment with her colleagues without dragging down the energy? There it was. The truth, stripped of the meringue coating. "I understand," I said. "You do?" She sounded relieved. "Oh, good. I knew you would be reasonable. You've always been the practical one. I'll tell Lauren. She'll be so relieved." "I'm sure she will be." "We'll miss you. Of course," she added, a lie so automatic she probably didn't even register it. "But we'll see you next week. Love you, honey. Goodbye, Mom." I lowered the phone and set it gently on the cradle. I did not slam it. I did not throw the file of the pediatric wing across the room. I sat perfectly still in my ergonomic leather chair, staring at the rain streaking the glass. For 36 years, I had played the game. I had been the steady one, the quiet one, the one who didn't cause trouble. When Lauren got into medical school, we threw a party that cost $5,000. When I was promoted to Director of Strategic Grant Allocation at Northbridge Health Endowment, overseeing a portfolio of nearly $500 million. My mother asked if the new job came with dental benefits. I had never corrected them. I had never explained that nonprofit administration was a broad term that covered everything from a receptionist at a soup kitchen to the executive who decided whether a university hospital received the funding to build a cyclotron. I had kept my work life separate because I wanted a sanctuary. I wanted a place where I was judged on my competence, not my lack of a stethoscope, but they had taken that silence and filled it with contempt. I opened the top drawer of my desk. Inside lay a small velvet box. I reached in and pulled it out. I flipped the lid. Nestled on the dark blue fabric was a sterling silver rattle. It was heavy, cool to the touch. I had commissioned it from a jeweler in Pioneer Square. On the handle, in delicate script, was the name my sister had chosen for her unborn daughter. "To the baby who will never know I exist." I thought. I looked at the silver shining under the office lights. It was a beautiful object. It was a thoughtful object. It was a gift from a sister who cared. But I wasn't a sister anymore. I was an administrative embarrassment. I snapped the box shut. The sound was like a pistol crack in the quiet office. I placed it back in the drawer, pushed it all the way to the back, behind a stack of business cards, and slid the drawer closed. Then, I turned to my computer. I woke up the screens. The dual monitors glowed with spreadsheets and email chains. I opened my calendar. I navigated to Saturday. The block of time from 2 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening was currently marked out in Blue Lauren's baby shower. Mariner's Crest Hotel. I right-clicked on the event. Delete. The block of time vanished, leaving a clean, white, empty space. I did not leave it empty. I clicked on the 2 o'clock slot again and began to type. Event Emergency Board Meeting. Location Executive Conference Room A Virtual Link. Attendees, the Board of Directors. Northbridge Health Endowment. Subject Strategic Review, Hospital Partnerships, Values. Compliance. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew exactly what this meant. Calling a board meeting on a Saturday afternoon was nuclear. It signaled a crisis. It signaled that something had been found that could not wait until Monday morning. It would ruin weekends. It would cause panic. The chairman of the board, a man named Robert Sterling who trusted my judgment implicitly, would see this notification and his first call would be to me. I needed to be ready. I opened a new email draft. I typed in the distribution list for the board. Subject, urgent. Immediate review of current allocations. Cascade Harbor Medical Center. Cascade Harbor, my sister's hospital. The place where she was currently a celebrated fellow. The place where the doctors attending her shower worked. The place that was currently waiting on a signature from my office to release the first tranche of a $75 million grant for their new surgical tower. I began to write. Dear members of the board, in light of recent internal assessments regarding the alignment of organizational culture and our core philanthropic values, I am convening an emergency review of our pending partnership with Cascade Harbor Medical Center. We have always maintained that Northbridge funds not just medicine, but a holistic ecosystem of care. When the leadership culture of a recipient institution displays a systemic failure to value the diverse contributions of its workforce, it poses a direct risk to the efficacy of our implementation and our reputational standing. I paused. I could hear my mother's voice. They are doctors. You're just admin. I could hear the unspoken sneer in the way the guests at the shower would have looked at me if I had gone. The way they would have asked, "And what do you do?" and then glazed over when I didn't say I was a neurologist. They wanted to separate the talent from the support staff. They wanted a hierarchy. Fine, I would show them the hierarchy. I typed the final sentence, the one that would stop the hearts of the hospital administrators who were likely, at this very moment, buying expensive gifts for my sister to curry favor with the chief of surgery. Propose immediate freeze on new disbursements pending review. I read it over. It was professional. It was cold. It was devastating. It was exactly 30 minutes before the baby shower was set to begin. I moved the mouse cursor over the send button. I didn't feel the guilt I usually felt when I disappointed my mother. I didn't feel the shame of being the lesser sister. I felt the cold, hard clarity of the rain against the window. I clicked send. The email whooshed away. The die was cast. I leaned back in my chair and turned to look out at the bay again. The ferry was halfway to Bainbridge Island now. The storm clouds were gathering over the Olympics, dark and heavy. You wanted professional, I whispered to the empty room. You got it. My sister, Dr. Lauren Whitaker, has always been the protagonist of the family narrative. She is 5 years younger than me, yet she has occupied the center of the room since the day she brought home her first straight-A report card. Lauren is brilliant, undeniably so. She has the kind of mind that absorbs organic chemistry textbooks like a sponge absorbs water, and she possesses a terrifyingly steady hand that was destined for surgery. Currently, she is a pediatric fellow at Cascade Harbor Medical Center, a position that my mother treats with the reverence usually reserved for canonized saints. Growing up, the hierarchy was established early and reinforced daily. Lauren was the arrow flying toward a target. I was the bow that stayed behind. I was the sturdy one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need accolades because I didn't have a destiny. I remember a dinner party 2 years ago. It was Thanksgiving, and the house was filled with extended family and a few neighbors. The air smelled of roasted sage and expensive perfume. My mother, Diane, was holding court in the kitchen, a glass of Chardonnay in one hand, gesturing towards Lauren with the other. Lauren is just exhausted, Diane told Mrs. Gable from next door, her voice dripping with a performative sympathy that was actually bragging rights in disguise. She pulled a 36-hour shift last week. She's doing her fellowship at Cascade Harbor. You know, it's the top program in the state. The thing she sees well. It takes a special kind of strength. Mrs. Gable nodded. suitably impressed. That is incredible. And Savannah. What is she up to these days? The pause that followed was less than a second, but to me, it spanned a geological era. My mother's smile didn't falter, but the light behind her eyes dimmed just a fraction. "Oh, Savannah is doing well," Diane said, patting my arm as if to console me for being present. "She's still with that non-profit organization downtown, in administration." "That's nice," Mrs. Gable said, her tone pivoting to the polite disinterest one uses for dull weather. "Charity work is so important." "It's not exactly charity," I had started to say. I wanted to explain that I was managing a portfolio that outperformed most hedge funds. I wanted to explain that the non-profit was an endowment that effectively acted as the central bank for the regional medical infrastructure. But Diane had already cut in, squeezing my arm tighter. "It's very stable. That's what matters, isn't it? She has good benefits, and she doesn't have the stress that Lauren has. We're just glad she's settled." Settled. The word tasted like dust. It implied that I had found a small, comfortable rock to hide under while my sister was out conquering the world. I had looked at Lauren then. She was across the room, laughing at something a cousin said, glowing with the effortless confidence of someone who has never walked into a room she didn't own. She wasn't malicious. That was the hardest part. Lauren wasn't an evil sister from a fairy tale. She was just so blinded by her own light that she couldn't see anything in the shadows. She believed the family narrative too. She believed I was just admin. She believed my job consisted of filing cabinets, planning holiday parties, and perhaps organizing a fun run once a year. I learned to stop trying to correct them. It was an exhaustion that went deep into my bones. Trying to explain my career to my family was like trying to explain quantum mechanics to a golden retriever. They would look at you with love, but they were only waiting for you to stop making noise so they could go back to the things they understood. The one time I had tried to show my father my quarterly impact report, he had glanced at the cover, said, "That's a lot of numbers, sweetie," and then asked if I had met any nice men at the office. So, I chose silence. It wasn't a retreat. It was a partition. I realized that fighting for a seat at their table was more exhausting than building my own table elsewhere. What they did not know, what they never bothered to ask, was that in the city of Seattle, within the steel and glass towers where the real decisions were made, the name Savannah Wright carried a weight that could crack pavement, or rather, the name S. Jane Wright. That was the name on the door of the corner office on the 34th floor. That was the name on the letterhead of the Northbridge Health Endowment. Northbridge was not a charity in the way my mother understood the word. We didn't sell cookies. We didn't hold bake sales. Northbridge was a legacy fund started by a tech magnate in the late 90s, a massive reservoir of capital designed to shape the future of healthcare in the Pacific Northwest. The endowment sat on assets valued at over $800 million. My job, my actual job, was Director of Strategic Allocations. I did not push paper. I pushed power. I was the person who sat across from hospital CEOs and grilled them on their long-term solvency. I was the person who looked at a research proposal for a new cancer drug and decided if the science was viable enough to risk $20 million of seed funding. I was the person who analyzed the demographic shifts of the city to decide where the next emergency room needed to be built. When I walked into a boardroom, people did not ask me if I was settled. They stood up. They buttoned their jackets. They sweat. It was a strange duality to live within. By day, I controlled the flow of capital that kept the region's medical heart beating. By night, or at Sunday dinners, I was the quiet daughter who hopefully had a decent 401k. I kept the worlds rigorously separate. I never talked about specific hospitals to my family. I never mentioned the doctors I met, some of whom were the bosses of my sister's bosses. I did this initially to avoid the awkwardness. I didn't want my family asking for favors. I didn't want Lauren to feel like her big sister was looking over her shoulder. I wanted to be just Savannah to them. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I could do for them. But now, looking at the rain sliding down the window of my office, I realized that my silence had allowed a dangerous weed to grow. My modesty had been mistaken for mediocrity. The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. My sister worked at Cascade Harbor Medical Center. It was a good hospital, prestigious, historic, and it was also currently in a very precarious financial position. Cascade Harbor had bet everything on a new pediatric wing. They wanted to build a state-of-the-art facility that would rival the best children's hospitals in the country. It was the project that would define their next decade. It was the project that secured Lauren's fellowship. They needed bright young stars to populate this new temple of medicine, but buildings cost money, enormous amounts of money. Cascade Harbor had secured bonds for half the construction, but for the operational costs, for the research grants, for the expensive machinery that went ping and saved lives for all of that, they needed Northbridge. On my desk, right now, sat the Pediatric Excellence Initiative file. It was a grant proposal requesting $50 million over 5 years. It was the lifeblood of my sister's career. It was the reason her friends were doctors. It was the reason she felt superior enough to exclude me from a party, because I wouldn't understand the technical talk. I had the pen in my hand. I was the lead strategist. I was the one who had to present this to the board and say, yes, this institution aligns with our values. For months, I had been their champion. I had looked at Cascade Harbor's numbers, ignored their slightly bloated executive bonuses, and focused on the good they did for the community. I had separated my personal annoyance with my sister's arrogance from my professional duty to the city. I was going to approve it. I was going to give them the $50 million. I had never used my work to overshadow my family. I had never used my title to make them feel small. I had swallowed every slight, every, at least it's stable, every dismissal. But then my mother had made that phone call. Sister's friends are doctors. The sentence replayed in my mind, a looped recording of humiliation. They didn't just think I was boring, they thought I was unworthy. They thought I didn't belong in the room with the important people. I stood up and walked to the wall of my office where the organizational chart of Northbridge Health Endowment hung framed in glass. My name was near the top, right under the C-suite. I looked at the file for Cascade Harbor again. If I was too simple, too administrative, too unimportant to eat finger sandwiches with a group of second-year residents, then surely I was too unimportant to understand the complex financial architecture of a $50 million grant. If they wanted a world where professional status was the only currency that mattered, I would pay them in that currency. I was not going to reject the grant because I was angry. That would be unprofessional. That would be petty. No. I was going to reject the grant, or at least pause it indefinitely because of values compliance. I walked back to my desk. The email I had sent to the board was already generating responses. My inbox pinged. It was from the chairman, Savannah. Saw the flag. If you are calling a Saturday meeting, it must be serious. I'm clearing my schedule. We cannot afford a compliance scandal. I sat down. I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a surgeon before the first cut. My family thought they had protected me from a social gathering. They had no idea that they had just handed me the scalpel, and I was the only one in the operating room who knew where the arteries were. The meeting was set for Saturday, 2 p.m. While Lauren was opening gifts of onesies and breast pumps, surrounded by her class of people, I would be systematically dismantling the financial foundation of the institution that gave her that class. I picked up the phone and dialed my assistant, who I knew would pick up, even though she was technically on leave. Sarah, I said when she answered, I need the full breakdown of Cascade Harbor's internal HR complaints for the last 3 years. Specifically, anything related to interdepartmental conduct, nurses versus doctors, admin versus medical staff. I want to know if there is a pattern of hierarchy issues. I can get that, Sarah said, her voice sharp and ready. Digging for leverage. No, I said, looking at the silver rattle I had hidden in the drawer. Digging for the truth. If they claim to be a hospital that serves the community, I want to know how they treat the parts of the community they think don't matter. I hung up. The game had changed. They wanted to play doctors and admin fine. They were about to learn that the admin owns the building. The document on my screen was not a declaration of war. It was far more dangerous than that. It was a standard board meeting agenda, formatted in 12-point Arial font, double-spaced, with the Northbridge Health Endowment logo watermarked in the background. To the untrained eye, it looked like the driest piece of literature ever produced. To anyone who understood the language of corporate governance, it was a guillotine blade suspended by a single thread. I typed the header, Emergency Strategic Review. Underneath, I listed the 4 pillars of the discussion I intended to lead on Saturday. Item 1, Organizational Culture as a Fiduciary Risk. Item 2, Interdisciplinary Respect and Staff Retention Protocols. Item 3, Reputational Risk Assessment in High-Visibility Partnerships. Item 4, Value Criteria for Future Disbursements. I stared at the blinking cursor. These words were neutral. They were professional. Yet, they were designed to tear open the soft underbelly of Cascade Harbor Medical Center. My argument to the board would be simple and devastatingly logical. We were preparing to give $50 million to an institution to build a pediatric wing. That wing required nurses, social workers, janitors, and administrators to function. If the culture of the hospital was so toxic that it viewed non-physicians as second-class citizens, the turnover rate would skyrocket, patient care would suffer, and the money we invested would be wasted on a hollow shell. I was not inventing this problem. I was simply choosing to shine a spotlight on it at the exact moment my sister was celebrating her exclusivity. I saved the document and sent it to the secure server. The digital timestamp read 4:15 in the afternoon. I needed to make one call. I picked up my personal cell phone, not the office line. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for, Dr. Marisol Grant. Marisol was the chief of surgery at Cascade Harbor. We had worked together 3 years ago when Northbridge funded a robotic surgery suite for her department. She was a woman of terrifying intellect, a trauma surgeon who could crack a chest open in 30 seconds, and a politician who could navigate a boardroom with a shark's grace. We had a mutual respect that bordered on friendship, the kind of friendship that exists between 2 generals in different armies. I pressed the call button. It rang 3 times. "Savannah," Marisol's voice came through, crisp and immediate. There was no background noise. She was likely in her office, post-rounds. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Please tell me you are not calling to audit my department's spending on gauze again." "Not today. Marisol," I said, leaning back in my chair. "The gauze is safe. I am calling about a scheduling conflict." "A conflict? I thought our quarterly review wasn't until next month." "It isn't. This is personal. Or rather, it is a mix of personal and professional." I paused, letting the silence hang for a beat. "I am looking at my calendar for this Saturday afternoon." "Ah, Saturday," Marisol said, her tone shifting slightly. It became less guarded, more social. "I assume you are calling about the event at the Mariner's Crest." My grip on the phone tightened. "You are going." "Yes, of course. I have to make an appearance. Lauren is one of my most promising fellows. Politics, you understand. If the chief of surgery skips the baby shower of the program's star resident, people start rumors that she is failing her boards." Marisol let out a short, dry laugh. "Plus, she sent a very nice invitation, letterpress, expensive." "I am sure it is lovely," I said. "So I will see you there?" Marisol asked. "I assume you are coordinating the whole thing. Mothers usually drive the ship. But sisters do the heavy lifting. That is the rule. Is it not?" "I am not coordinating it, Marisol." "Oh, well, you can at least have a drink with me. I do not plan to stay long, just enough to drop off a gift and smile at the right people. We can catch up on the capital campaign for the new wing." I took a breath. This was the moment. The pivot point. "I will not be having a drink with you, Marisol," I said, my voice dropping to a flat, factual register. "I am not going to the shower." "Conflict?" she asked lightly. "No," I said. I was not invited. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was the silence of a woman who processes information at the speed of light and has just hit a data point that creates a catastrophic error. "Excuse me," Marisol said. I think the connection broke up. Did you say you were not invited? You heard me correctly. I was told, specifically, that the guest list was restricted to medical professionals. My mother and sister felt that my presence as someone in administration would be awkward. They wanted to protect me from feeling out of place among the doctors. That is, Marisol trailed off. I could hear the gears turning in her head. She was recalculating everything she knew about my sister. She was juxtaposing the image of Lauren, the bright-eyed fellow, against the reality of Savannah Wright, the woman who held the purse strings of the entire regional medical system. That is insane. It is a choice, I corrected. Does she know? Marisol asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. Does Lauren actually know what you do, I mean? Really know? She thinks I work in an office. She thinks I handle paperwork. She thinks I am stable and safe and boring. And you have never corrected her. I tried. They do not listen. They prefer the version of me that fits into the box they built. Savannah, Marisol said, and now there was a note of genuine alarm in her voice. If you are not at the party, where are you going to be on Saturday afternoon? I have called an emergency board meeting. Marisol. I could hear Marisol inhale sharply. She knew what that meant. She knew the bylaws of the Northbridge Health Endowment better than anyone outside the board. You are convening the board, she stated. On a Saturday, during the shower, yes. And the topic, strategic review of hospital partnerships, specifically, Cascade Harbor, specifically, the alignment of internal culture with our funding mandates. My God, Marisol breathed, you are going to freeze the grant. I am going to propose a freeze on new disbursements pending a 90-day review, I said calmly. It is standard procedure when we identify a risk. A risk, you are the risk. Savannah. This is personal retribution. Is it? I challenged her. Marisol, look me in the eye metaphorically and tell me that Cascade Harbor does not have a problem with arrogance. Tell me that your surgeons do not treat the support staff like furniture. Tell me that the culture you preside over does not value the letters after a name more than the human being standing in the scrubs. Marisol was silent. She was a truthful woman. She could not lie to me. We have issues, she admitted finally. Every hospital has issues. Surgeons have God complexes. It is part of the job description. And that complex is now a liability, I said. My sister is merely a symptom. She is excluding her own family because she has internalized the idea that anyone who is not a doctor is beneath notice. If she treats her sister that way, how does she treat a nurse? How does she treat a scheduling coordinator? How does she treat a patient who asks too many stupid questions? You are going to use her baby shower as evidence. I am going to use the reality of the situation. I am asking the board to consider if we should pour $50 million into a system that breeds that kind of caste system. Savannah, listen to me, Marisol said, her voice urgent. If you convene the board at 2 o'clock on Saturday, phones are going to start ringing. The CEO of Cascade Harbor is going to get a call from your chairman. The board of trustees at the hospital will be alerted. Half the people at that shower are senior leadership. Their pagers are going to go off. The news will hit that ballroom before the cake is cut. I expect it will. It will humiliate her. It will destroy the event. I am not the one who decided who was worthy of being in that room. Marisol, Lauren made that list. She wanted a room full of professionals. Well, on Saturday, she is going to get a very harsh lesson in how the professional world actually works. You are playing a dangerous game, Marisol warned. If this looks like a vendetta, the board might turn on you. It won't look like a vendetta because I have the data, I said, glancing at the pile of HR complaints my assistant had just emailed me. I have 3 years of exit interviews from Cascade Harbor. Do you know what the #1 reason for resignation is among your non-clinical staff? Lack of respect from medical leadership. I am not inventing the fire, Marisol. I'm just pointing out that the building is burning. Marisol sighed. It was a heavy, resigned sound. I cannot stop you. No, you cannot. I am going to that party, Marisol said slowly. I have to go, and now, I am going to be standing there. Drinking punch. Knowing that an airstrike is inbound. Just smile. Marisol, talk shop. That is what they want, isn't it? You are terrifying, she said. I am just an administrator, I replied. We are very detail-oriented. One question, Marisol asked before hanging up. Do you want me to warn her? I looked out the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the city scoured and gray. No, I said. If she is smart enough to be a doctor, she should be smart enough to figure out why the sky is falling. Let her enjoy her party. Let her enjoy her status. She paid a high price for it. Goodbye, Savannah. See you in the boardroom. Marisol. Eventually. I ended the call. My hand was not shaking. I felt a cold, hard knot of resolution in my chest. I turned back to my computer and opened the agenda again. I added a subpoint to item 4, review of leadership competency regarding holistic team integration. It was a polite way of asking, do these people know how to play nice with others? I printed the agenda. The printer whirred, a comforting, mechanical sound. I took the single sheet of warm paper and slid it into a folder. I was not just preparing for a meeting, I was preparing a mirror. On Saturday, I would hold it up, and for the first time, my family would have to look at themselves not through the lens of their own self-importance, but through the unforgiving lens of the institution that owned their future. They wanted to separate the doctors from the rest of us. I was about to show them that without the rest of us, the doctors were just people standing in expensive rooms, waiting for the lights to go out. At 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, the atmosphere in Seattle was divided into 2 distinct climate zones at the Mariners Crest Hotel, located on a bluff overlooking the Sound. The air was perfumed with expensive lilies and the scent of champagne. Inside the Crystal Ballroom, the light was golden and soft, filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the water. 3 miles away, in the boardroom of the Northbridge Health Endowment, the air was recycled, cool, and smelled faintly of ozone and floor wax. The light here was artificial and unforgiving. It did not flatter. It revealed. I walked into the conference room at 2 minutes past the hour. I had traded my usual office cardigans for a suit I rarely wore. It was a charcoal gray structural piece by a designer whose name usually appeared in fashion magazines rather than non-profit ledgers. It was sharp enough to cut glass. My hair was pulled back into a severe, tight twist. I carried no purse. I carried no phone. I held only a single, thick binder bound in black leather. 6 men and 3 women sat around the oval table. These were the titans of the Pacific Northwest economy. There was Robert Sterling, the chairman, who had built his fortune in shipping logistics. There was Elena Ross, a former federal judge. There was Marcus Thorne, a venture capitalist who terrified half of Silicon Valley. They stopped talking when I entered. Usually, when I entered this room, I was the facilitator. I was the one ensuring everyone had water, that the projector was working, that the agenda was clear. Today, I did not check the water pitchers. I walked to the head of the table, placed my binder down with a heavy, deliberate thud, and remained standing. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I said. My voice was not the soft, accommodating tone of a sister. It was the low, resonant frequency of a woman who controls a checkbook worth 9 figures. At that exact moment, at the Mariners Crest. My mother was greeting the guests at the registration table. I know the scene as if I were there, because the script never changes. The table was draped in white linen. On it lay rows of name tags, printed in elegant calligraphy. Every single tag had a suffix, MD, DO, PhD. It was a sea of credentials. Oh, welcome, Dr. Evans, Diane would be saying, her smile bright and practiced. Lauren is just inside. She's so excited you could make it. A guest, perhaps a young resident in neurology, would scan the room. Is your other daughter here, Savannah? I think I met her once at Christmas. Diane's smile would stiffen, just for a millisecond, before reassembling itself into a mask of pity. Oh, no, Savannah couldn't make it. You know how it is. She works in charity administration. Administration, the guest would ask, polite but disinterested. Yes, it's a nice job. Very low stress. We thought it was better if she skipped today. You know, with so many medical professionals here, the conversation gets so technical. We wanted to protect her from feeling out of the loop. I could almost hear the guest's polite chuckle. Ah, I understand. It can be boring for the lay people when we start talking shop. Exactly, Diane would agree, lowering her voice confidentially. She's happier doing her own thing, paperwork and flyers, that sort of thing. Back in the boardroom, Robert Sterling leaned forward. He was a man who did not like his weekends interrupted unless a building was on fire. Savannah, he said, his voice gravelly. You sent out a code red alert. The email subject line said, Values Compliance. That is usually code for embezzlement or a sexual harassment scandal. Why are we here? I opened the black binder. I did not look at my notes. I looked directly at Sterling. We are here because we are about to make a $50 million mistake, I said. The room went dead silent. The Cascade Harbor Pediatric Initiative, I continued, pacing slowly to the window that looked out toward the same bay my sister was currently toasting. We are in the final stages of disbursement. The contracts are on my desk. The check is scheduled to be cut on Monday morning. We know this, Marcus Thorne said, tapping his pen on the table. It's a good project. New wing, top-tier research. Why the freeze? Because, I said, turning back to face them, it is not a money problem. It is a value problem. I pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The screen behind me flickered to life. It displayed a graph. This is the staff retention rate at Cascade Harbor over the last 5 years, I said, specifically broken down by department. The blue line represents physicians, the red line represents nursing, administrative support, and social work. The blue line was steady. The red line looked like a cliff edge. They are hemorrhaging support staff, Elena Ross observed, her judicial eyes narrowing. 30% turnover annually in nursing, that is catastrophic. It is, I agreed. And do you know why they leave? I clicked the remote again. A word cloud appeared on the screen, generated from hundreds of exit interviews. The largest words, bold and black, were undeniable. Disrespect, hierarchy, toxic, invisible. We are building a state-of-the-art facility, I said, my voice rising slightly. We are putting our name, the Northbridge name, on the side of a building. We are promising the city that this will be a sanctuary for sick children, but a hospital is not made of bricks and mortar. It is made of people. And right now, the culture at Cascade Harbor is designed to crush anyone who does not have a medical degree. At the Mariner's Crest, the champagne was flowing. Waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. My sister, Lauren, stood in the center of a circle of admirers. She was wearing a white dress that hugged her baby bump, looking radiant and important. The fellowship is going great, Lauren was saying to the chief of cardiology. The new wing is going to change everything. We'll finally have the resources we deserve. It's about time, the cardiologist replied. Administration has been dragging their feet on the funding. You know how those paper pushers are. They see a spreadsheet. We see a life. They just don't get the mission. A ripple of laughter would have gone around the circle. That's why I'm glad it's just us today, Lauren would say, glancing around the room with satisfaction. No friction, just people who understand the stakes. Someone might have made a joke then. Maybe we should prescribe them some common sense. More laughter, light, airy, dismissive laughter, the sound of people who believe they are the only essential workers on the planet. In the boardroom, the laughter of the doctors was a ghost frequency that only I could hear. Here, the mood was heavy. Savannah, Robert Sterling said, taking off his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. I see the data. The turnover is bad, but every hospital has a pecking order. Doctors bring in the revenue. Doctors are the talent. Is this really enough to freeze a $50 million grant? He looked at me with a scrutiny that went beyond professional assessment. He had known me for 8 years. He knew my family background vaguely. He knew my sister was a doctor. Be honest with us, Sterling said softly. Is this personal? The question hung in the air. I could have flinched. I could have looked away. If I were the Savannah my mother knew, I would have crumbled. I would have stuttered and apologized for wasting their time, but I was not that Savannah. I was the director of strategic allocations. I met Sterling's gaze with a calmness that bordered on unnatural. Robert, I said, if I were making this personal, I would be at a party right now, drinking mimosa and smiling while my family insulted my career. I am not there. I am here, doing the job you pay me to do. I walked over to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. You ask if the pecking order matters. I said, let's trace the patient journey. I drew a circle. Patient X, a 7-year-old with leukemia, from a low-income family. I drew a line to a square. The scheduler, the person who coordinates the chemotherapy appointments. This person makes $40,000 a year at Cascade Harbor. According to these exit interviews, they are routinely berated by physicians for incompetence if a slot isn't open. They are treated as obstacles. I drew another line. The social worker, the person who ensures the family has transportation to the hospital, the person who fights with insurance companies. At Cascade Harbor, they are excluded from care team meetings because they are not clinical enough. I turned back to the board. If the scheduler quits because she is tired of being yelled at, the appointment is missed. If the social worker is silenced, the family loses their bus fare and doesn't show up. It does not matter how brilliant the surgeon is. It does not matter how shiny the new MRI machine is. If the infrastructure of respect is broken, the child does not get treated. I slammed the cap back onto the marker. We are a philanthropic organization. Our mission statement, which you wrote, Robert, says we fund dignity in care. Not just dignity for the patient, dignity for the entire ecosystem that supports the patient. I paused, letting the words settle. If an institution only respects people who have a title, how do you think they treat a patient who has nothing? How do you think they treat a single mother on Medicaid? Do you think the arrogance stops at the employee handbook, or do you think it bleeds into the bedside manner? Elena Ross nodded slowly. As a former judge, she understood the concept of systemic rot better than anyone. She has a point. Robert, if the culture is elitist, the care for the vulnerable always suffers. We have seen it in the legal system. It is cancer. We are about to hand them $50 million, I said, driving the final nail in. That money is an endorsement. If we sign that check on Monday without conditions, we are telling them that their behavior is acceptable. We are funding the very arrogance that creates the risk. Marcus Thorne looked at the graph again. So what do you want? Savannah? I want a freeze, I said. 90 days. We tell them the money is contingent on a cultural audit. We demand a remediation plan for the interdisciplinary hostility. We force them to prove that they value the paper pushers as much as they value the neurosurgeons. Back at the hotel, the cake was being cut. It was a 3-tiered masterpiece, white and sterile. My mother was clapping. Lauren was beaming. To the future, someone toasted. To the next generation of medicine. They had no idea that the future was currently being rewritten in a room they couldn't even see. They had no idea that the admin girl they had mocked was currently holding their destiny in the palm of her hand. I am not asking to cancel the project, I said to the board, my voice steady and reasonable. I am asking us to use our leverage. We have the power to force them to be better. If we don't use it, then we are just a bank account with a logo. Robert Sterling looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the other board members. He saw the nods. He saw the agreement. Okay, Sterling said. You have your freeze. Draft the notification. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply nodded. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But Savannah, Sterling added, a warning tone in his voice. This is going to be a declaration of war. Cascade Harbor isn't going to take this lying down. Their CEO will be on the phone to me in 10 minutes. I expect he will, I said, gathering my papers. Are you ready for the fallout? He asked. I thought of the silver rattle hidden in my desk drawer. I thought of the empty chair at the baby shower. I thought of my mother's voice telling me to stay away to avoid embarrassment. I have been preparing for this my whole life, I said. I walked out of the boardroom. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing the decision. At the Mariner's Crest, the party was winding down. The guests were picking up their gift bags. My mother was hugging Lauren. It was perfect, Diane whispered. Just perfect. Everyone who mattered was here. I walked down the hallway of the empty office, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I took out my phone and turned it on. I had one email to send. Not to the board, to the hospital. The subject line was simple. Notice of funding suspension pending strategic review. I hit send. The invisible sister had just become the most visible problem in their world. The elevator doors at the end of the boardroom corridor slid open with a soft, hydraulic hiss that sounded violently loud in the quiet of the Saturday afternoon office. We all turned. Dr. Marisol Grant stood in the opening. She looked like a creature from a different planet who had crash-landed in our sterile, fluorescent world. She was wearing a cocktail dress of deep emerald silk, the kind of fabric that catches the light and ripples like water. A silver shawl was draped hastily over her shoulders, and her heels were high. Strappy things designed for mingling on plush hotel carpets, not for marching across the industrial gray slate of a corporate headquarters. She was out of breath. Her hair, usually pulled back in a severe surgical bun, was loose and styled in soft waves, though the wind from the street had pulled a few strands free. She carried a small, beaded clutch in one hand and her hospital pager in the other. "I am here," Marisol announced. Her voice was steady, but her chest rose and fell rapidly. Robert Sterling, our chairman, did not stand up. He simply took off his reading glasses and folded them on the table. "Dr. Grant, we were not expecting you to leave the festivities so early. I was told there was an emergency meeting regarding the Cascade Harbor grant," Marisol said, walking into the room. She ignored the empty chairs along the side and walked straight to the foot of the oval table, standing opposite me. I assumed my presence would be required. "It is not required," Sterling said, his voice neutral, "but it is relevant. Please, take a seat." Marisol sat. She placed the beaded clutch on the mahogany table. It looked ridiculous there, a frivolous artifact of a party sitting next to binders full of actuarial tables and legal threats. I remained standing near the whiteboard. I did not look at Marisol with friendship. In this room, she was not my friend. She was the chief of surgery of an institution I was prosecuting. "Savannah has presented us with some troubling data," Sterling began, leaning back in his chair. "She has presented retention rates. She has presented exit interview summaries. She has painted a picture of an institution that has a systemic culture problem." Marisol looked at me. Her eyes were dark and unreadable. "Savannah is thorough. I have never known her to be wrong about the numbers." "The numbers are clear," Marcus Thorne interrupted, tapping his pen against a glass of water. "What we want to know is the context. Savannah claims there is a caste system at Cascade Harbor. She claims that the medical staff treats the administrative and support staff with a level of disdain that constitutes a fiduciary risk." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Marisol. "Dr. Grant, you are the chief of surgery. You run the most prestigious department in that building. Is there a caste system at your hospital?" The room went silent. The hum of the ventilation system seemed to vanish. This was the moment. Marisol could lie. She could spin. She could say that tensions were normal in a high-stress environment, that doctors were just passionate, that this was all a misunderstanding. If she did that, she might save the grant for today, but she would lose her integrity with us forever. Marisol looked down at her hands. She twisted a diamond ring on her finger. Then she looked up. "Yes," she said. A collective exhale went through the room. "It is not official policy, obviously," Marisol continued, her voice gaining strength. "But it is the air we breathe. We are a teaching hospital. We train the best. We tell our residents from day one that they are the elite. We tell them that they are the ones who hold life and death in their hands. It breeds excellence, yes, but you are asking if it breeds arrogance. She paused. It is a chronic disease in our hallways. We are excellent at medicine. We are terrible at humility. So the support staff are treated as what? Elena Ross asked, her judicial tone cutting through the air. Subordinates? Utilities, Marisol corrected. Like the electricity or the water pressure, you only notice them when they do not work. When they function correctly, they are invisible. When they break, you kick them. I stepped forward. I needed to sharpen the blade. Generalities were easy to forgive. Specifics were impossible to ignore. Marisol, I said. My voice was cool, devoid of the warmth we usually shared over coffee. You just came from the baby shower at the Mariner's Crest, an event attended by the rising stars of your hospital, the future leadership. Yes, she said. I was not there, I stated. I was explicitly asked not to attend because my job in administration was deemed too embarrassing to be discussed among doctors. But you were there. You heard the conversations. Marisol stiffened. She knew where this was going. Tell the board, I commanded. Tell them what the general sentiment is regarding people who do the work that we do. People who manage funds. People who handle policy. People who do not hold a scalpel. Marisol looked at Sterling, then at me. She looked pained. Savannah, is this necessary? It was a party. People were drinking. Alcohol is a truth serum, Marcus Thorne said. Answer the question, Doctor. Marisol sighed. She smoothed the silk of her dress. There was a conversation near the buffet, 2 senior attending physicians and a few fellows. They were joking about the grant application process. And, I prompted, one of them referred to the grant committee, meaning this board, as the necessary evil. Marisol's voice was quiet. He said that we have to dance for the checkbook holders, jump through their bureaucratic hoops, and pretend to care about their metrics so we can take the money and do the real work. The real work, Sterling repeated, his face darkening. Another one, Marisol continued, forcing the words out. Made a joke about hospital administration. He called them the brakes. He said, doctors are the engine, admin are the brakes. Their only job is to stop us from going fast. I watched the faces of the board members. These were people who had built empires. Robert Sterling had built a logistics network that spanned the globe. Marcus Thorne had funded companies that changed how the internet worked. They were not brakes. They were the architects of the modern world. And they did not like being called necessary evils by a 30-year-old surgeon with a god complex. There was one more thing, I said. I didn't know for a fact there was one more thing, but I knew the pattern. I knew the rhythm of these insults. About fundraising, Marisol closed her eyes for a second. Yes, someone asked how the hospital was going to cover the operational overrun for the new wing. My colleague laughed and said, we will just send the beggars out in their nice suits. As long as they come back with the check, who cares what they say? The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, like a thunderhead about to break. Elena Ross placed her pen down on the table with a sharp click. If that is what they say in a ballroom, wearing tuxedos and drinking champagne, imagine what they say in the operating room when a nurse hands them the wrong instrument. Exactly, I said. I turned back to the whiteboard. This is not about hurt feelings. This is about operational reality. If they view the financial and administrative oversight as begging and breaking, they will not respect the compliance protocols we are attaching to this grant. They will take the $50 million, and they will ignore every condition we set regarding community outreach and equitable care because they do not respect the people who wrote the conditions. I looked at Marisol. Did leadership know? Marisol looked defeated. We knew the culture was aggressive. We prioritized clinical KPIs. We looked at mortality rates, infection rates, surgical volumes. If a surgeon was a jerk, but had a 99% success rate, we looked the other way. We called it personality quirks. We didn't treat it as a systemic risk until today. Until the money was threatened, Marcus Thorne noted. Yes, Marisol admitted. until the money was threatened. I walked back to my seat, but did not sit. I stood behind my leather chair, gripping the back of it. I am proposing a formal motion, I said. We freeze the disbursement of the $50 million for the Pediatric Excellence Initiative. The freeze will last for 90 days. 90 days is a long time, Sterling said, playing devil's advocate, though I could see he was already convinced. Construction crews are contracted, equipment is on order, a 3-month delay could cost them millions in penalties. Then they should have thought about that before they created a culture that excludes the people who manage those contracts, I countered. During those 90 days, we require a complete cultural audit conducted by an external firm of our choosing. We require a remediation plan with measurable goals for staff retention and interdisciplinary satisfaction. And we require a signed commitment from the board of Cascade Harbor that the caste system is officially dismantled. This is extreme, one of the quieter board members, a man named David, spoke up. Savannah, we are talking about a pediatric wing, kids with cancer. If we delay this, are we hurting the patients to make a point about politeness? It was the argument I knew was coming. It was the shield bullies always used. They hid behind the nobility of their mission to excuse the toxicity of their methods. We are not hurting the patients, I said, my voice dropping to a register that vibrated in the chest. We are protecting them. I looked at David, then at Marisol, then at Sterling. We are building a house of healing, I said. But if the foundation of that house is rotten, it will fall. If a nurse is afraid to speak up because a doctor thinks she is a utility, a mistake will happen, and a child will die. If a social worker is mocked for worrying about a family's bus fare, a child will miss treatment and relapse. I paused, letting the image sink in. We are preparing to sign a check for $50 million to build a wing for children, I said, delivering the line I had been crafting in my mind since the moment my mother told me I wasn't good enough. We cannot build a sanctuary for the innocent using the bricks of contempt for the rest of us. I looked directly at Marisol. You cannot save lives with one hand while you are strangling your support system with the other. The money stops until the hands open. The room was still. The arguments about construction penalties and timelines seemed to evaporate. The moral weight of the decision settled on the table like a stone. Robert Sterling picked up his pen. He wrote something on the notepad in front of him. Then he looked up at Marisol. Dr. Grant, Sterling said, you should probably go back to your party. You have a message to deliver to your CEO. Marisol stood up. She picked up her beaded clutch. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than frustration in her eyes. I saw fear, and beneath the fear, a grudging, profound respect. I will tell him, Marisol said. Tell him the check isn't in the mail, Marcus Thorne added dryly. Tell him it is in Savannah's drawer, and she has the key. Marisol nodded to the room. She turned and walked out. The hydraulic hiss of the door closing behind her sounded like a seal being set. All those in favor of the motion to freeze? Sterling asked. Every hand in the room went up. I lowered myself into my chair. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. I had won. I had protected the endowment. I had forced a reckoning. But as I looked at the vote count, I knew that 3 miles away, my sister was likely opening a gift box containing the silver rattle I had bought her. She would be holding it up, smiling, unaware that the sister who bought it had just brought her world to a grinding, screeching halt. The silence in my car was heavier than the storm clouds bruising the Seattle skyline. I sat in the parking garage beneath the Northbridge Tower, the engine idling, the heater humming a low, steady note. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. The board meeting had adjourned 20 minutes ago. The motion had passed unanimously. The email notification had been delivered to the server at Cascade Harbor Medical Center at exactly 3:15. I watched the raindrops race down the windshield, blurring the concrete pillars of the garage. I was waiting. I knew the physics of a catastrophe. First comes the impact, then the shockwave, and finally, the noise. At 3:32, the noise arrived. My phone, resting on the passenger seat, lit up. It buzzed once, twice, then began a frantic, continuous vibration that sounded like an angry hornet trapped against the leather. The caller ID flashed Mom. I did not answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. 5 seconds later, it rang again. Mom. I imagined the scene at the Mariners Crest Hotel. The champagne bubbles had likely gone flat. The air in the ballroom, previously thick with self-congratulation and the scent of expensive lilies, would now be electric with rumor. Marisol Grant had left the party. That was the first domino. The chief of surgery does not walk out of a celebration for her star fellow unless the building is burning or a VIP patient is dying. But Marisol had left without a pager going off. She had left after a phone call. She had left to meet with Northbridge. The phone stopped ringing. A text message appeared on the lock screen. Answer your phone. Emergency. Then another. Lauren is crying. Something happened with the hospital funding. Call me. I stared at the screen. My mother did not know she was texting the architect of the emergency. She thought she was texting a bystander. She thought she was texting the help. The phone rang a third time. This time, the ID read, Lauren. I let that go to voicemail too. I needed them to sit in the uncertainty a little longer. I needed the panic to strip away the arrogance so that when the truth finally landed, it would hit bare skin. A voicemail notification popped up. I tapped the speaker button, filling the quiet car with my sister's voice. She sounded breathless. Her voice pitched high with a fear I had never heard before. She was usually so composed, so clinically detached. Savannah, are you there? Look, I know I said you shouldn't come, and I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, but something crazy is happening. Dr. Grant just left. She said she was called into a strategic review with the Northbridge Endowment. People are saying the grant is frozen. The $50 million, Savannah, my fellowship funding, the new wing, everything. There was a pause, a ragged intake of breath. You work in nonprofit administration, right? You know how these things work. I don't know. Can you ask someone? Can you check your system or ask your boss if they've heard anything about Cascade Harbor? Maybe it's just a clerical error. Mom is freaking out. Please call me back. Ask your boss. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were tired, but they were dry. The irony was so dense I could almost taste it. She wanted me to ask my boss. She wanted me to appeal to the authority that she respected, unaware that the authority was sitting in a sedan a few miles away, wearing a suit that cost more than her party catering. I remembered a conversation from 3 months ago. It was a Sunday dinner. Lauren had just secured the fellowship. She was glowing, drunk on her own success. She had told the table, the hospital got the Northbridge grant because of the prestige of our surgical team. They looked at our roster and knew they had to fund us. Excellence attracts capital. She had taken credit for the rain, never understanding that I was the weather system. She believed the money appeared because she was brilliant. She did not understand that the money appeared because I had spent 6 weeks convincing a skeptical board that her hospital was worth saving, despite its bloated executive salaries. Now, she was asking the admin girl to see if there was a clerical error. My phone rang again. Mom. I decided to answer this one, not to explain, but to listen. Hello, Mom? I said. Savannah finally. Diane's voice was a shriek. Where have you been? I have been calling for 10 minutes. It is chaos here. Absolute chaos. What is wrong? I asked calmly. It's the hospital. Some board of directors or whatever just pulled the plug on the money. Lauren is devastated. She thinks she's going to lose her position if the wing isn't built. You have to do something. What do you want me to do, Mom? You work in this field, she snapped. You know people. Call your supervisor. Call the manager of your office. Find out if this is real. Tell them Lauren is a doctor. Tell them there must be a mistake. Use your whatever you have. Do you have connections? I thought my job was just paperwork, I said. Don't be petty. Savannah, not now. This is your sister's career. Just go into your office on Monday and ask someone important what is going on. Please. I don't need to wait until Monday, I said. What do you mean? I mean, I don't need to ask someone important. Savannah, stop speaking in riddles. I'm standing here watching my daughter cry. Dr. Grant walked out like she was going to a funeral. Someone said the email came from the Director of Strategic Allocations. Do you know who that is? Is that someone you can email? I closed my eyes. Director of Strategic Allocations. It was the title on my business card. The business card I had given my mother 5 years ago, which she had promptly lost in the bottom of her purse. Hold on, Diane said, her voice turning muffled as she pulled the phone away. Lauren, stop crying. Look, Dr. Evans is pulling something up on his phone. What is it? I could hear the background noise now. The party was disintegrating. I heard the clinking of glass, the murmur of anxious voices, and then, clear as a bell, I heard a male voice in the background. I'm on the Northbridge website, the man said. I'm looking for the board members. We need to know who launched this review. If we can find a contact, maybe the chief of staff can reach out directly. Go to the executive leadership page, another voice said. I gripped the steering wheel. This was it. The mine I had laid was about to be stepped on. Okay, loading, the man said. Here we are, CEO, CFO. Here, Director of Strategic Allocations. That's the person who signed the freeze order. Who is it? Lauren's voice cracked in the background. Who is destroying my life? The name is S. Jane Wright. The man read. There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched across the city. Right, Lauren said. That's my last name. It's a common name, my mother said to her, her voice trembling slightly on the line. It's a coincidence. S. Jane Wright, the man repeated. There's a photo. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. I visualized the photo on the website. It was a professional headshot, taken in black and white. I was wearing the same structural blazer I was wearing right now. I was looking directly into the camera, unsmiling, powerful. It was not the face of a sister. It was the face of the endowment. Let me see that, Lauren demanded. A gasp, a sharp, suffocated sound that was more shock than air. No, Lauren whispered. That's Savannah. Don't be ridiculous, Diane said. Snatching the phone or looking over her shoulder, I could hear the rustle of fabric. Savannah works in admin. She answers phones. She isn't. Her voice trailed off. That is her, Lauren said. Her voice was rising, climbing the ladder from confusion to horror. That is Savannah, but the name S. Jane, Savannah Jane, she uses her middle name. Read the bio, the man's voice insisted. S. Jane Wright oversees a portfolio of $800 million in regional health assets. She is the primary architect of the Northbridge Values Compliance Framework and leads the Strategic Allocation Committee. 800 million, my mother whispered. The number seemed to choke her. Savannah. She isn't an admin assistant, Lauren said. The realization was hitting her like physical blows. She's the director. She's the one who controls the money. She's the one Marisol went to meet. But she never told us, Diane stammered. She never said. We never asked, Lauren said, and in those 3 words, I heard the first crack in the glass house she had lived in all her life. She's on the phone, Diane said, suddenly realizing she was still holding her mobile. I'm still connected to her. The background noise ceased. It was as if the entire room had turned to look at the device in my mother's hand. Savannah, Diane said. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was small, frightened, stripped of all its maternal authority. Savannah, are you there? I am here, Mom. They are saying your picture is on the website. They are saying you are the director. I know. Lauren is here, Diane said weakly. She wants to talk to you. There was a fumbling sound, and then my sister was on the line. Savannah, Lauren asked. She sounded like she was 6 years old again, waking up from a nightmare. Savannah, tell me this is a mistake. Tell me you didn't just freeze $50 million because I didn't invite you to a party. It wasn't because of the party. Lauren, I said. My voice was steady, calm, the voice of the woman in the photograph. It was because of why you didn't invite me. But you're my sister. Am I asked, or am I just the embarrassment you needed to hide from your important friends? I didn't mean. You meant every word. I cut her off. You meant to separate the doctors from the support staff. You meant to create a room where only one kind of person mattered. Well, you succeeded. You are in a room full of doctors, but the person who matters is the one you left outside. Savannah, please. She was crying now, open and desperate. You have to fix this. You can't let them cancel the wing. It's my fellowship. It's my career. Just tell me what to do. Can you ask them to stop? I looked out at the rain again. The storm was passing, drifting south toward Tacoma. You are confused, Lauren, I said softly. What? You are asking me to ask them, I said. You still think there is a them above me that I can appeal to. You still think I am the messenger. I paused. I wanted to make sure she heard this. I wanted to make sure she understood the new geometry of our universe. There is no one else to ask, Lauren. I am the board. I am the decision. So, tell me. I gripped the phone tight. Do you want to ask your sister for a favor? Or do you want to ask the administrator of the Northbridge Health Endowment why your hospital failed its values compliance check? The line was dead silent. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the shattering of a lifetime of assumptions. She started, but the words failed her. I will be in my office on Monday morning, I said. If your CEO wants to save his funding, he knows where to find me. And Lauren? Yes, she whispered. Next time you check a guest list, make sure you know who is actually paying for the party. I ended the call. I placed the phone back on the seat. The silence returned to the car. But it was different now. It was not the silence of exclusion. It was the silence of authority. I started the engine. The dashboard lights glowed, illuminating the dark garage. I backed out of the space and drove toward the exit, leaving the shadows behind me. The phone rang again almost before I cleared the parking garage ramp. It was Lauren. I knew she would call back. The first call had been shock. This one would be the interrogation. I pressed the answer button on my steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the wet asphalt of 4th Avenue. Hello, Lauren, I said. Is it true? Her voice was no longer frantic. It was trembling with a kind of terrified awe, the way someone sounds when they realize they have been sleeping next to a tiger. I need you to say it clearly. Savannah, are you actually the person who decides the funding, or is this just a title? Is it just administrative oversight? It is not just a title, I said, merging into the traffic. I am the Director of Strategic Allocations. I evaluate the proposals. I investigate the institutions. I present the strategy to the Board of Directors. They vote based on my recommendation. So, to answer your question, yes, I am the gatekeeper. Oh my God, she breathed. I could hear the background noise of the hotel lobby, the hushed whispers of guests who were probably watching her pace back and forth. You control $50 million. I control a portfolio of $800 million, I corrected her. The $50 million for your hospital is just one line item on my spreadsheet. Why? She asked, the word cracking in the middle. Why did you do it? Is this revenge? Is this because I didn't send you an invitation? Because if it is, Savannah, that is insane. You're punishing sick children because you're mad at me. Stop, I said. My voice was sharp enough to cut through the static. Do not use the children as a shield. Lauren, it is beneath you. Then what is it? Because it feels like you waited until the moment I was happiest to pull the rug out from under me. I didn't wait. Lauren, you handed me the evidence. You and Mom made a decision based on a set of values. You decided that my profession was a source of embarrassment. You decided that I couldn't handle being in a room with real professionals. You decided that status was more important than family. Mom said it was to protect you, Lauren protested, her defense automatic. She said the doctors would judge you. She said you would feel small. And why is being judged something I should fear? I asked, turning onto the highway on-ramp. Why is their judgment the gold standard? Why do you accept the premise that their opinion of my worth is the only one that matters? It's not that, it's just they are intense. They judge everyone. Exactly, I said. They judge everyone, and that is why your hospital is losing its funding. What? I froze the money because the culture you are so desperate to protect the culture of doctors versus everyone else is toxic. It is rotting your hospital from the inside out. I didn't invent that. Lauren, I just chose to stop ignoring it. But it's just a party, she cried. It's just a stupid baby shower. It is never just a party, I said. It is a symptom. You told Mom you wanted guests of a certain caliber. You wanted to look successful. You wanted to look like you belonged to the elite. And in doing so, you treated your own sister like a liability. If you do that to me, someone you claim to love, how do you treat the nurse who corrects your chart? How do you treat the janitor who mops your floor? Silence stretched between us, humming with the vibration of the road. Lauren started, then stopped. I didn't think it was like that. You didn't think at all, I said. You just assumed. You assumed I was small because I was quiet. You assumed I was unimportant because I didn't wear a white coat. I never asked, she whispered. The realization was a physical weight in her voice. I never actually asked you what you did. I mean, really asked. No, you didn't, I said. You asked if I had dental. You asked if I got a Christmas bonus. You asked if I was dating anyone. You checked the boxes for struggling but stable sister. You never once asked me what my responsibilities were. You never asked about the strategy I build. You never asked about the lives I impact. I thought you were just happy being support, she admitted. I thought you liked the background. I do like the background, I said. That is where the power is. The people on stage are just actors. Lauren, the people in the background are the ones directing the show. You never realized that because you were too busy looking at the spotlight. I'm sorry, she said. It was a reflex. A quick, shallow apology. I'm sorry I didn't ask. I'm sorry I didn't invite you. Can we fix this? Can you unfreeze it? No. Savannah, please. The chief of staff is going to kill me. If they find out my sister is the reason the money stopped. They already know, I said. Marisol Grant knows, and by Monday, everyone will know. But you are missing the point. I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this to force you to see. See what? See the truth, I said. You told me once that you felt sorry for me. You said you hoped I would find something fulfilling one day. I was trying to be nice. You were trying to be superior, I countered. You needed me to be smaller than you. Lauren, be honest. You needed the big sister who failed so that you could be the little sister who succeeded. My mediocrity was the backdrop for your brilliance. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. It was the sound of a scalpel hitting a nerve. That's not true, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I pressed. Why didn't you invite me? Really, was it to protect me? Or was it because you didn't want the reminder of your ordinary family spoiling your perfect doctor tableau? There was a long silence. The rain drummed against the roof of my car. Lauren's voice broke. I wanted to be the only one. I wanted to be the one who made it. If you were there just being normal, it would remind everyone that I came from normal. I wanted them to think I was special. You are special, I said. You are a brilliant doctor, but you are not a god, and you are not better than me. I know, she sobbed. I know that now. God. Savannah, I have been so awful. I have been so arrogant. I treated you like furniture. You did, I said. And today, the furniture stood up. I messed up, she said. I messed up everything. I just wanted today to be perfect. You wanted it to be exclusive, I corrected. And exclusion has a price. So what happens now? She asked. Do you destroy the hospital? Do you destroy me? I am not a destroyer. Lauren, I am an allocator. I allocate resources where they will do the most good. Right now. Cascade Harbor is not a good investment. It is a risky one. It is a place where arrogance has replaced empathy. We can change, she said quickly. I can change. Then prove it, I said. How? Monday morning, I said. The board will review the conditions for lifting the freeze. It will not be easy. It will require hard work. It will require humility. It will require you and your colleagues to listen to the people you have been ignoring for years. I will do it, she said. I will do whatever it takes. We'll see, I said. But Lauren, yes. Don't do it for the money. Don't do it to save your fellowship. Do it because you realize that your sister, the admin girl, just taught you the most important lesson of your medical career. What's that? That you can't heal people if you don't respect them. I pulled into the driveway of my apartment complex. The conversation was winding down, but the energy was still vibrating in the air. Savannah, Lauren said, her voice quiet now, stripped of the panic, left only with the raw ache of reality. Does Mom know? Does she really understand? Mom is about to find out. I said, she has lived in the same fantasy you have. Today, the lights came on. I'm scared, Lauren admitted. I'm scared to go back into that room. Everyone is looking at me. Good, I said. Let them look. For the first time. They aren't looking at the star fellow. They are looking at a woman who needs to answer for her choices. It is a good place to start. Saturday, she murmured. I chose who was good enough for Saturday. Yes, I said. You chose your guests, and on Monday, the board will choose its partners. I love you. Savannah, she said. It sounded desperate, a Hail Mary pass at the end of a losing game. I love you too. Lauren, I said. That is why I am doing this. If I didn't love you, I would have let you become one of them. I would have let you turn into a doctor who thinks she is a god. I am saving you from that. Thank you, she whispered. She didn't sound like she meant it yet. She sounded like someone in shock, but the words were there. Go home, Lauren, I said. Go home and think about who you want to be. The doctor who excludes her sister, or the doctor who fights for her patients. I'll try, she said. Goodbye, Lauren. I hung up the phone. I sat in the car for a long moment, listening to the engine cool. My hands were gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. It hadn't been a victory lap. It had been surgery, painful, bloody, necessary surgery. I had cut out the tumor of their disrespect. Now, we had to see if the patient would survive the recovery. On Monday morning, the rain had returned to Seattle, a relentless gray curtain that washed the city clean of the weekend's pretense. I was sitting at my desk on the 34th floor, the only sound in the room being the soft, rhythmic clicking of my keyboard and the hum of the climate control system. I was reviewing the quarterly projections for a rural mental health initiative in eastern Washington, but a part of my mind was waiting. At 9 o'clock exactly, my intercom buzzed. Ms. Right, my assistant Sarah said, her voice professional and crisp. Your 9 o'clock appointment is here. Dr. Lauren Whitaker. She does not have a security clearance, so I had to sign her in as a visitor. Send her in. Sarah, thank you. I stood up. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the slate-gray water of Elliott Bay. I wanted to be standing when she entered. I wanted the visual to be complete. The heavy oak door opened. Lauren walked in. She was not wearing her white coat. She was wearing a raincoat, wet at the shoulders, and her hair was pulled back in a messy knot that suggested she hadn't slept in 48 hours. She took 2 steps into the room and stopped. For the first time in her life, my sister was seeing me. She didn't look at my face immediately. She looked at the room. Her eyes traveled over the expanse of the office, the custom-built mahogany desk that was large enough to land a plane on, the seating area with the Italian leather sofas, the wall of framed awards and commendations from state governors and university presidents. She looked at the view, which commanded the entire waterfront, a view that cost more per square foot than her entire apartment. This was not a cubicle. This was not a back room where people filed papers. This was a sanctuary of decision-making. Lauren looked at me. I saw her throat work as she swallowed. The sister who had patronized me for a decade, the sister who had offered me pitying smiles and leftovers, was gone. In her place was a woman who realized she had been walking through a minefield blindfolded. "Savannah," she said. Her voice was small, absorbed by the acoustic panels on the walls. "Lauren," I replied. I did not move to hug her. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. "Please, sit down." She walked across the room, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. She sat down on the edge of the chair, clutching her purse in her lap like a shield. I sat down behind my desk, leaning back, lacing my fingers together. "I didn't know," she whispered, looking around one last time. "I mean, I knew you had a job, but I didn't know it was this." "You never came to visit," I said simply. "You were always too busy with rounds." "I am so sorry," she said. The words came out in a rush, a dam breaking. "Savannah, I am so incredibly sorry. For Saturday, for the phone call, for everything. Please, you have to believe me." I watched her. I saw the tears welling in her eyes, genuine tears born of exhaustion and shock. But I could not accept a generic apology. A generic apology is a bandage on a broken bone. It covers the wound, but doesn't set the fracture. "Stop," I said. Lauren froze. "I don't want a blanket apology. Lauren, I'm sorry for everything means nothing. It is lazy. If you are going to apologize to me, I want you to know exactly what you are apologizing for." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "Tell me," I said, my voice dropping to a low, calm register. "What are you sorry for? Be specific." Lauren took a breath. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. She saw that I wasn't going to let her off the hook. "I'm sorry I didn't invite you to the baby shower," she started, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry I excluded you because I thought you wouldn't fit in." "That is the first layer," I said, nodding. "The social layer. You hurt my feelings. We can get over that. Sisters fight. What is the second layer?" She frowned, searching my face. The job. I'm sorry I judged your career. I'm sorry I called you an admin." "Closer," I said. "But dig deeper. It wasn't just that you got my title wrong. It was what you thought my title meant." Lauren looked away, towards the window. She was smart. She was a diagnostician. She was beginning to see the pathology of her own behavior. "I'm sorry I assumed that because you weren't a doctor, you weren't important," she said slowly. "I'm sorry I bought into the idea that the only work that matters is clinical work. I treated you like you were less intelligent, less capable, less significant than me and my friends." "That is the prejudice," I agreed. "That is the cultural rot I'm trying to cut out of your hospital. But there is a third layer, Lauren, the one that hurts the most, the one that has nothing to do with doctors or grants." She looked at me, confusion clouding her eyes. "I don't." "Why didn't you know?" I asked. "I have been in this role for 4 years. I have been at Northbridge for 8. Why did it take a funding crisis for you to find out who I am?" Lauren crumbled. She slumped back in the chair, the fight draining out of her. "Because I never asked," she whispered. "I'm sorry that I was so wrapped up in my own world that I never bothered to be curious about yours. I'm sorry that I was a terrible sister who took your presence for granted and never asked you a single real question about your life." I let the silence hang in the room. It was a heavy, clean silence. The apology had landed. It wasn't just words anymore. It was an admission of a decade of neglect. "Thank you," I said softly. "I accept that apology." Lauren wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell me all those times I made comments? All those times Mom made excuses for you? Why didn't you just slam your business card on the table and scream at us? Why did you let us think you were small?" I looked at the framed photo on my desk, a picture of me shaking hands with the governor. "Because I am tired, Lauren," I said. "I spend 10 hours a day in this office negotiating with billionaires, hospital CEOs, and government officials. I spend my days proving my worth, proving my strategy, defending my decisions to a board of directors who demand perfection. I leaned forward. When I come home on Sundays, I don't want to negotiate my value with my family. I didn't want to have to bring a PowerPoint presentation to Thanksgiving dinner just to get you to respect me. I wanted you to respect me because I am your sister. If I had to prove I was powerful to get your love, then the love wasn't real. Lauren flinched as if I had slapped her. That is fair. You asked why I let you think I was small, I continued. I didn't let you. You needed it. What do you mean? Be honest. Lauren, every time you complained about your residency, every time you talked about how hard it was to be a doctor, you looked at me with this relief. You liked that I was the easy one. You liked that I was the background character. Why? Lauren looked at her hands again. Her fingers were twisting the strap of her purse. Because it made me feel big, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I was so scared. Savannah, medical school was so hard. Residency is terrifying. I feel like an imposter every single day. I'm terrified I'm going to kill a patient. When I looked at you and I thought you had this simple, easy life, it made me feel superior. And feeling superior was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I know, I said. I have known that for a long time. That is why I stayed quiet. I let you use me as a mirror to make yourself look taller. But the problem is, you started believing the reflection was real. Lauren nodded, tears streaming down her face again. I know. I'm so sorry. We are past sorry, I said, sitting up straighter. Now we are at the part where we fix it. Tell me what is happening at the hospital. Lauren took a ragged breath and shifted into professional mode. Or at least she tried. It's a disaster. The CEO received your email on Saturday. He called an emergency meeting yesterday. They are panicking. The construction is stopped. The contractors are threatening to walk. And everyone knows it's because of me. Do they? Yes. Marisol told the CEO what happened. She told him about the baby shower. She told him about the comments. I am the pariah. Savannah. I walked into rounds this morning and nobody would look at me. I'm not just the fellow who lost the money. I'm the symbol of the arrogance that destroyed the project. They hate me. She looked at me with desperate eyes. You have to help me. I'm not asking you to give the money back right now. I know you can't. But how do I survive this? How do I go back there tomorrow? I looked at her. I saw the fear, but I also saw the resilience. She was a Whitaker. We didn't break easily. I can save you, I said, but you have to choose how you want to be saved. What do you mean? Option 1, I said, holding up a finger. I can make a call. I can tell the board that the audit is a formality. I can tell the CEO that we will lift the freeze in 2 weeks if they issue a public apology. I can smooth it over. You will still be the girl who caused trouble, but the money will come back, and eventually, they will forget. You can go back to being a doctor, and we can pretend this never happened. Lauren looked hopeful. And option 2? Option 2, I said. You lean into the skid. You don't hide from the blame. You own it. You become the person who fixes the culture. How? You go to the CEO, you go to Marisol, you tell them that you are volunteering to lead the internal review committee. You tell them that you want to be the liaison between the medical staff and the support staff. You become the face of the change. It will be painful. The other doctors will mock you. They will call you a traitor. They will say you are sucking up to the administration. I paused. But if you do that, you won't just be the sister of the donor. You will be a leader. You will be the one who actually solved the problem instead of just creating it. Lauren sat in silence for a long minute. She looked at the rain hitting the window. She looked at the expensive leather of my chair. She was weighing the comfort of the status quo against the terrifying prospect of real growth. If I choose option 1, she said slowly, I stay the same. I stay the arrogance. Yes, I said, and the money will eventually come back. But the respect won't. Not mine, and not yours for yourself. Lauren took a deep breath. She sat up straighter. She wiped her face and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I'll do it, she said. I'll take option 2. I'll lead the committee. It will be hard, I warned. You will be walking into a firing squad every day for 90 days. I deserve it, she said. I created the mess. I should be the one to clean it up. I nodded. A flicker of pride sparked in my chest. It wasn't the pride of a sister watching a graduation. It was the pride of a mentor watching a student finally understand the lesson. Good, I said. I will have my secretary send over the compliance framework documents. You should memorize them before you talk to Marisol. Okay, she said. She stood up. She looked exhausted, but she looked solid. She wasn't the fragile porcelain doll my mother tried to protect anymore. She was cracked, but she was real. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Savannah, yes. What about us? What about dinner on Sunday? Is it going to be awkward? Probably, I said honestly. Mom is going to be terrified of me. Dad is going to be confused. It will take time. I want to fix us, too, she said. Not just the hospital. I stood up and walked around the desk. I didn't hug her yet. We weren't there. But I stood close enough that the barrier of the desk was gone. If you want to fix us, I said, there is one condition. Anything. From now on, I said, looking her dead in the eye. When you see me, you do not ask me if I am busy. You do not ask me if I am still at the office. You do not ask me if I am dating. What do I ask? You ask me what I did. I said, you ask me what I built. You ask me whose life I changed today. And you listen to the answer. Lauren managed a small, watery smile. Okay, deal. Deal, I said. So, she said, testing the water immediately. What did you do today? Savannah. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in a week. Today, I said. I helped a doctor save a patient she didn't know was dying, herself. Lauren nodded. She understood. I'll see you on Sunday, she said. Get to work. Dr. Whitaker, I replied. You have a culture to fix. She walked out the door. I watched it close. I turned back to the window, to the gray city and the turbulent water. The storm was still out there, but inside the office, the air was clear. I went back to my desk, sat down, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to hide the work on my screen. I was Is Jane right? And my sister finally knew what that meant. The reports landed on my desk every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. They were no longer just financial spreadsheets or construction updates. They were cultural autopsies. For the first month of the freeze, the data from Cascade Harbor was chaotic. The Interdisciplinary Respect Index, a metric my team had synthesized from anonymous surveys, was hovering in the red zone. The comments section of the surveys was a bloodbath. Nurses vented about being treated like furniture. Scheduling coordinators described being screamed at for things outside their control. Janitorial staff reported being literally stepped over in the hallways. But by week 6, the tone began to shift. It was not a miraculous transformation. It was a grinding, mechanical gear shift, audible and friction-heavy. Cascade Harbor had implemented mandatory role recognition seminars. I didn't attend them. I didn't want my presence to skew the performance. But I watched the recordings. They were painful to watch. Surgeons who had spent 30 years being treated as gods were forced to sit in circles with phlebotomists and listen to how their sarcasm affected workflow. Lauren was at the center of it. I watched a video file from a Tuesday afternoon session. Lauren stood at the front of a conference room, her pregnancy now undeniable, her ankles swollen. The room was hostile. A senior orthopedist, a man who brought in $20 million a year in revenue, was leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. This is ridiculous. Dr. Whitaker, the man said on the recording, we are surgeons, not kindergarten teachers. We don't have time to hold hands and sing songs. We have patients to save. Lauren didn't flinch. In the past, she would have laughed along to gain his approval. Now, she looked tired, but steady. It is not about holding hands, Dr. Vance, Lauren said, her voice clear. It is about risk management, and I know it's annoying. I know you think this is administrative nonsense. I thought so too. She paused. looking around the room. "I am the reason we are here," she admitted. "I am the one who treated the endowment director like she was invisible because she didn't have an MD. I cost us $50 million because I thought I was too important to be kind. So, if you want to be angry at me, but do not be angry at the process that is trying to save our funding." The room went silent. It was a messy, uncomfortable silence, but it was real. The change wasn't just in the seminar rooms, it was seeping into the family dynamic, turning our Sunday dinners into something unfamiliar. We no longer played the game of, "Let's praise Lauren." The air was thick with things unsaid, or rather, things being reevaluated. The turning point for my mother came 3 weeks before the probation period ended. Cascade Harbor held its annual fundraising gala. Usually, I avoided these events. I would send a check and stay home. But this year, as the primary auditor of their future, my attendance was mandatory. I arrived in a floor-length black gown, wearing the diamond earrings I had bought myself after closing the deal on a rural telemedicine network. I walked in not as a daughter, but as Jane Wright. My mother and Lauren were already there near the ice sculpture. Diane saw me enter. Her face lit up with the usual maternal reflex, but then it froze. She watched as the CEO of the hospital, a man she viewed as a celebrity, beelined for me. She watched him shake my hand with both hands, his body language deferential, almost pleading. She watched the chief of staff wait for a break in the conversation just to nod at me. I made my way over to them eventually. "Hello, Mom. Hello, Lauren." "You look expensive," Diane said. It wasn't a criticism. It was a statement of fact, delivered with a tone of bewilderment. "It is a work event," I said. "I have to dress the part." A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne. He stopped for me before I even signaled. "Ms. Wright, sparkling water with a twist, correct? We have a bottle set aside for you." "Thank you, David," I said, taking the glass. Diane stared at the waiter, then at me. "He knows your drink order." "I fund his payroll, Mom," I said gently. "It is his job to know." Later that night, I went to the ladies' room. Diane followed me in. She stood by the sinks while I touched up my lipstick. The room was empty. "I didn't see you," Diane said suddenly. Her voice echoed off the marble tiles. I looked at her in the mirror. "You saw me, Mom. I was standing right there." "No," she shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "I mean, for the last 10 years, I didn't see you, tonight, watching those men, those important, powerful men circle around you like you were the sun. I realized something." She gripped the edge of the granite counter. "I thought I was protecting you from them," she whispered. "But I was actually protecting my own idea of how the world works. I couldn't understand a power that wasn't wearing a white coat, so I pretended it didn't exist. I made you invisible because I was too limited to see you." I capped my lipstick. It was the apology I had waited for since I was 22. "You see me now?" I said. "I do," she said. "And I am ashamed that it took a $50 million check for me to do it." "Better late than never," I said. I didn't hug her. We weren't there yet. But I handed her a tissue. "Fix your mascara. Mom, you're the mother of the woman who owns the room. You need to look the part." The real test came the following Tuesday. Lauren invited me to the Department of Surgery's weekly morbidity and mortality conference. This was the Holy of Holies, the closed-door meeting where doctors discussed their mistakes. Outsiders were never invited. I sat in the back row. The room was filled with 60 surgeons. The air smelled of coffee and anxiety. Lauren stood at the podium. She looked huge in her maternity scrubs, ready to pop any day. "Before we begin the case review," Lauren said, tapping the microphone, "I would like to introduce a guest. Sitting in the back row is Ms. Savannah Wright." Heads turned, eyes narrowed. I saw the whispers. "That's the money. That's the freeze." "Ms. Wright is the Director of Strategic Allocations for the Northbridge Health Endowment," Lauren continued. Her voice did not shake. "She is here to observe our compliance with the new communication protocols. She is not here as my sister. She is here as the person who holds the keys to our research wing. I expect you to accord her the respect that position demands." She didn't apologize for me. She didn't soften my title. She stated my power as a clinical fact. I scanned the room. I was looking for the eye rolls. I was looking for the smirks. I saw a few. Dr. Vance, the orthopedist, looked bored, but mostly, I saw fear, and in the fear, I saw the beginning of compliance. Then, the moment happened, the moment that justified the last 80 days of stress. The chief of surgery, Marisol Grant, stood up. "Thank you, Dr. Whitaker. Before we move to the clinical cases, we have a housekeeping item regarding the anonymous reporting system." Marisol looked at a piece of paper in her hand. "We received a complaint last week regarding an incident in the ICU. A frantic nurse asked a resident for help with a crashing patient. The resident told the nurse, quote, 'Do not interrupt me while I am teaching. Fetch a junior resident.' The patient stabilized, but the delay was critical." Marisol looked up. Her eyes locked on a young, arrogant surgeon in the third row, Dr. Holloway. He was a rising star, brilliant with a scalpel, and known for terrorizing the nursing staff. "Dr. Holloway," Marisol said, "please stand up." He stood, looking indignant. "This is a clinical review. Dr. Grant, why are we discussing admin complaints?" "Because," Marisol said, her voice like ice, "under the new Northbridge compliance framework, treating a colleague with contempt is a reportable safety violation. Ms. Wright is sitting right there. She has the power to revoke our teaching status if we demonstrate a hostile learning environment." Holloway looked back at me. I held his gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just tapped my pen against my notebook. "You have two choices." "Doctor," Marisol said, "you can apologize to the nursing team publicly right now and acknowledge that your arrogance endangered a patient, or you can pack your locker. We will not lose our funding for your ego." The silence stretched so tight, it felt like a violin string about to snap. Holloway looked around for support. He found none. His colleagues were looking at their shoes or looking at me. They knew the math. One career versus $50 million. Holloway swallowed. His face turned a splotchy red. He started. His voice choked. "I apologize. It was unprofessional. I prioritize my lecture over patient safety. I will apologize to the nursing staff personally." "See that you do," Marisol said. "Sit down." I wrote a single word in my notebook. Progress. It wasn't perfect. Holloway didn't mean it. He was just scared. But fear was a functional substitute for respect until the habit formed. The system was self-correcting. The invisible people had been given a weapon, and they were using it. 2 weeks later, the pediatric wing held its ribbon-cutting ceremony. It was a gray, drizzly Seattle morning, but the mood was electric. The building was beautiful glass and steel, filled with light. I stood on the dais next to the mayor and the hospital CEO. Lauren was in the front row, sitting in a wheelchair because she was 2 days past her due date. The CEO gave a speech praising the partnership. He thanked Northbridge. He thanked the community. Then he introduced me. "And now, the woman who made this possible, Jane Wright." I stepped to the microphone. The applause was polite, respectful. I looked out at the crowd of doctors. "We have built a beautiful building," I said. "But a building is just a shell. The soul of this hospital is not in the glass or the steel. It is in the way you speak to one another in the hallways at 3 a.m. I paused. "We have released the funds for Phase 1, I announced. "The doors are open." Applause erupted. "However," I continued, and the applause died down instantly. "The board has voted to retain the freeze on the Phase 2 research endowment. That is another $25 million. It remains in a holding account." I looked directly at Lauren, then at Marisol, then at Dr. Holloway. "We have seen behavior modification," I said. "Now we need to see culture change. You have apologized because you had to. Phase 2 will only be released when you behave with respect because you want to. We will vote again in 6 months." It was a hard line. I saw the disappointment on the CEO's face. He wanted the full check, but I wasn't buying their obedience. I was leasing it. That night, Lauren went into labor. I was in the waiting room at 2 in the morning. It was a different waiting room than the ones I usually inspected. It was warm, quiet. Diane was pacing. "She's doing great," a nurse said, popping her head out. "She's asking for Savannah." I walked into the delivery room. Lauren looked exhausted, sweat matting her hair to her forehead. She was holding a bundle wrapped in a generic hospital blanket. "It's a girl," Lauren whispered. I walked over. The baby was tiny, red-faced, squirming. A new life, a life that would never know the hierarchy unless we taught it to her. "She's beautiful," I said. "I named her," Lauren said, looking up at me. Her eyes were glassy with exhaustion, but clear with intent. "Oh, Jane," Lauren said. "Her middle name is Jane, like your professional name, so she knows who paved the road for her." I felt a lump in my throat that had nothing to do with board meetings or audit reports. I reached out and touched the baby's hand. "Hello, Jane," I whispered. "Did you really keep the money frozen?" Lauren asked, a half smile on her lips. "Even on the day your niece is born?" "Especially on the day my niece is born," I said. "I want her to work in a hospital that deserves her. We aren't there yet." Lauren nodded. She pulled the baby closer. "We'll get there," she said. "I know you will," I replied. "I'm not going anywhere." I looked at the baby, then at the monitors beeping softly in the background. The machinery of medicine was working perfectly, but the machinery of the human heart was still under construction. The check was still in my drawer, unsigned, and for the first time, I knew my sister was glad it was there. It was the only thing keeping them honest. The 90 days of probation expired on a Tuesday morning that was deceptively bright for Seattle. The sun was out, reflecting off the glass towers of downtown. But inside the boardroom of the Northbridge Health Endowment, the atmosphere was as tight as a drum skin. This was the final judgment. For 3 months, the $25 million earmarked for Phase 2 of the Cascade Harbor Pediatric Initiative had sat in an escrow account, frozen solid. Today, the hospital leadership had to convince us that they were warm enough to thaw it. I sat at the head of the table. To my right sat Robert Sterling, our chairman. To my left, the rest of the board. Opposite us sat the delegation from Cascade Harbor, the CEO, Dr. Marisol Grant, and sitting slightly apart from them, my sister, Dr. Lauren Whitaker. Lauren looked different. She was no longer the glowing, pregnant center of attention she had been at the baby shower. She was a new mother, back from maternity leave only a week. She looked tired, but there was a sharpness to her gaze that hadn't been there before. She wasn't wearing her white coat. She was wearing a simple navy suit, identical in formality to the one I wore. The CEO began the presentation. He was slick, polished, a man used to charming donors. He pulled up slide after slide of data. "As you can see," he said, using his laser pointer to circle a graph, "our internal satisfaction scores have risen by 15%. We have implemented the one-team protocol. We have established the anonymous reporting hotline. We have fired 2 attending physicians who refused to comply with the new conduct standards." He looked at us, smiling the smile of a man who thinks he has passed the test. "We have checked every box Ms. Wright set out for us," he concluded. "We have met the metrics. We are ready to move forward." The room was silent. I didn't smile. I looked at the papers in front of me. The data was accurate. They had done the work, or at least, they had done the paperwork. Marcus Thorne, the venture capitalist on our board, leaned forward. He was the cynic of the group, the man who smelled blood in the water better than a shark. "The numbers are pretty," Marcus said, his voice dry. "But anyone can juice the numbers for 90 days when there is $25 million dangling in front of them. How do we know this isn't just a performance? How do we know you won't go right back to your caste system the moment the check clears?" The CEO stiffened. "I assure you, Mr. Thorne, the cultural shift is genuine." "Is it?" Marcus challenged. "Because culture doesn't change in a quarter. Culture takes a generation. You are asking us to bet a fortune on the idea that a bunch of surgeons suddenly decided to be humble. The CEO opened his mouth to argue, but a voice cut across the room. He is right. We all turned. Lauren stood up. The CEO looked at her with a mix of alarm and warning. Lauren ignored him. She walked to the front of the room, standing not behind the podium, but beside it, exposed. "Dr. Whitaker," Robert Sterling said, "you have the floor." "Mr. Thorne is right," Lauren said, looking directly at Marcus, then at me. "You shouldn't trust the data. The data is just compliance. It is people doing what they are told so they don't get fired." The room went deadly quiet. The CEO looked like he was about to have a stroke. Marisol Grant, however, was watching Lauren with a strange intensity. "I am not here to defend the graph," Lauren continued. "I am here to offer myself as the evidence of the disease." She took a breath. 3 months ago, I hosted a celebration for the upcoming birth of my daughter. I made a conscious choice to exclude my own sister from that event. I did not exclude her because she was unkind, or because we were fighting. I excluded her because she works in administration. Lauren looked at me. Her eyes were steady, but I could see the sheen of tears she was holding back. I told myself I was protecting her. Lauren said to the board, "But I was protecting my own ego. I wanted to be in a room where everyone had a medical degree because I believed that made us superior. I believed that what we did was real work, and what my sister did was just support. I needed her to be small so I could feel big." She turned back to Marcus Thorne. "That is the culture of Cascade Harbor. I was the poster child for it. We were arrogant. We were cruel. And we were wrong. We thought we were the gods of the hospital, and everyone else was just the help." "And now?" Marcus asked, his voice softer. "Now," Lauren said, "I know that I am not the god. I am just a mechanic for the human body, and without the people who manage the funds, who clean the rooms, who schedule the surgeries, who comfort the families, I am a mechanic without a garage. I am useless." She paused. "I caused this freeze," she said. "I am the liability. If you decide not to fund us today, I accept that. Because if we are only changing to get the money, then we don't deserve a single dime. We should only get the funding if you believe we have actually learned that healing is a team sport." She sat down. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. It wasn't tight. It was heavy with the weight of truth. The CEO looked down at his hands. He realized that his polished graphs meant nothing compared to the confession of the woman who had started the fire. I waited a moment, letting the words settle into the wood of the table. Then I leaned forward. "Thank you, Dr. Whitaker," I said. I looked at the CEO and Marisol. "The board has heard the data. We have heard the testimony, but I have one final question before we vote." Marisol nodded. "Ask it, Savannah." "Do you want this money because you are afraid of losing the project?" I asked. "Or do you want this money because you finally understand that you cannot cure a patient in a building built on contempt?" Marisol looked at me. "We want it because we understand. We learned the hard way, but we learned." "Very well," I said. "We will vote." I passed out the paper ballots. This was not a show of hands. This was a secret vote, the future of the hospital wing, and the vindication of my entire career, came down to 9 pieces of paper. The scratching of pens was the only sound in the room. I marked my ballot. I folded it. Robert Sterling collected them. He counted them in silence. His face was unreadable. He looked up. "The motion to release the Phase 2 funding," Sterling announced. "Passes unanimously." The CEO let out a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. Lauren closed her eyes and slumped slightly in her chair. "However," I interjected, before the celebration could start. "There are conditions." "Conditions?" the CEO asked. "The Oversight Committee remains in place for 2 years. I said, "We will conduct random culture audits. If the interdisciplinary respect index drops below our threshold for 2 consecutive quarters, the funding turns into a loan with interest. You will pay us back personally. The CEO swallowed. Understood. And, I added, looking at Lauren, we require that the hospital leadership publicly acknowledge the role of non-clinical staff in the success of this wing. No more invisible hands. Agreed, Marisol said. 2 weeks later, the ribbon was cut on the Phase 2 expansion. The rain held off, and the sky was a crisp, brilliant blue. The crowd was larger this time. Doctors, nurses, donors, and press gathered in the atrium of the new pediatric center. I stood in the crowd. I had declined a seat on the stage. I wanted to see this from the ground. I wanted to see if the change looked real from the perspective of the people who usually stood in the back. The master of ceremonies, a famous local news anchor, stepped up. Today we celebrate the doctors, he began, reading from the script. But we also celebrate the invisible hands, the administrators, the custodians, the social workers, the people who make the miracle of medicine possible. It was a small line, but it was there. And for the first time, I saw the nurses in the crowd nod. They weren't rolling their eyes. They felt seen. Then Lauren took the stage. She was holding her daughter, Jane, who was now 3 months old and looking around with wide, curious eyes. I was asked to speak today about the future of medicine, Lauren said into the microphone, and I brought the future with me. She bounced Jane gently. But the future isn't just about new machines or new drugs. It is about a new way of seeing each other. Lauren looked out into the crowd. She scanned the faces until she found me. I was standing near a pillar, half hidden by a fern, comfortable in my observation post. I would like to introduce you to someone, Lauren said. She is standing in the back, because that is where she prefers to work. But she is the reason this building exists. She pointed at me. The crowd turned. This is my sister, Lauren announced, her voice ringing clear and proud across the atrium. Savannah Wright. She is not a doctor. She is the director of the Northbridge Endowment. But more importantly, she is the person who taught us respect. She taught this entire hospital that you cannot claim to care for life if you do not value every single person who helps sustain it. The applause started slowly, then built. Marisol Grant started it, then Dr. Holloway, then the nurses. Soon, the entire room was clapping. They weren't clapping for the money. They were clapping for the truth. I felt a heat rise in my cheeks, but I didn't look away. I nodded to Lauren. She smiled, shifting Jane to her other hip so she could wave. Thank you, Savannah, Lauren said, for not letting us stay broken. The circle closed 1 year later. It was a Saturday in May. The rhododendrons were in full bloom, exploding in pink and purple all over the city. I walked up the familiar driveway of the Mariner's Crest Hotel. The valet opened my door. Welcome back to the Mariner, ma'am. Thank you. I walked into the lobby. It was the same lobby where, a year and a half ago, I had been the ghost at the feast. The same chandeliers, the same view of the water, but the air felt different, lighter. I held the invitation in my hand. It was not a heavy cardstock embossed with gold. It was a simple, handwritten note on creamy paper. Jane's first birthday, Mariner's Crest Hotel, 2:00 p.m., and at the bottom, in Lauren's messy doctor scrawl handwriting, please come. This time, I am not inviting you because of your title. I am inviting you because you are my sister, and because Jane needs her Auntie Savannah. I walked toward the ballroom. The doors were open. I could hear laughter. I could hear music. I stepped inside. The room was full. There were doctors there. Yes, Marisol was holding a glass of punch. Dr. Holloway was chasing his own toddler, but there were also nurses. The hospital scheduling coordinator was sitting at a table with my mother. The receptionist from the pediatric wing was holding a balloon. It was a mixed room. The lines had blurred. The hierarchy had dissolved into a community. My mother saw me first. She stood up and waved. Savannah, over here. We saved you a seat. Then Lauren saw me. She was holding Jane, who was smeared with smash cake frosting. Lauren handed the baby to her husband and walked over to me. She didn't stop to check who was watching. She didn't glance around to see if my presence was acceptable. She walked straight up to me and wrapped her arms around me in a fierce, tight hug. "You came," she whispered into my ear. "Of course I came," I said, hugging her back. "I never miss a board meeting," Lauren laughed, pulling back. "This isn't a board meeting, Savannah. It's a party." "I know," I said, looking around the room where everyone was talking to everyone, regardless of the letters after their name. "But the compliance looks excellent." "We're trying," Lauren said. She took my hand. "Come on. Jane has been waiting for her gift." I let her lead me into the room. I wasn't the director of strategic allocations. I wasn't the woman with the checkbook. I wasn't the invisible sister. I was just Savannah. And for the first time in my life, that was enough to fill the whole room. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Savannah's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share this message of respect with even more people.